And those of you that weren't able to get in the live meeting, if you do have questions, yes, you can ask those. I'll ask periodically if you have any questions too. Okay, first thing I want to do is just congratulate you. Just thank you for the hard work you're putting into this. I know you're all busy, especially now that testing is here. Lives are pretty crazy. And we were at Training 3 ourselves, and we found out that South Dakota is on target overall with results from other states. And we got to look at all your feedback that you were giving to other SNEs. For the most part, feedback was pretty good and thorough, so good job on that. And also, some of our SNEs received accolades from Smarter Balance Team for the amount of completed reviews. So good job on that. I think some have over 10 reviews so far, so yeah, way to go. And what today will look like, this is just the agenda. First off, we'll go over the goals in the calendar, just a reminder. We'll talk about the new software release updates. We'll then review updated guides, or just kind of talk about them a little bit. We'll then see if any of you have resource review questions. The assignment before this Training 3 was to review a resource, come with questions. And then we'll talk about, or Joan will talk about copyright updates. Yes, remember if you do have questions, just type it in the box, in the Q&A box. All right, so first off, just goals and calendar. These are the goals as of now. So reviewing resources is our first priority. Right now there is a bottleneck. I think there's only about 200 resources that have got posted actually, and there's around 1,500 resources that still need to be reviewed. So they wanted our main concern to be reviewing resources. And with these, we want to make sure that we are giving quality reviews. And if you haven't submitted your 2 resources yet at the beginning, which was part of assignment 1, still get those in. And just make sure that they are quality resources as well. And I just say this because one resource, this got posted, but all it was a link. It didn't contain any other information. It just was a link to a website. And it did get approved by 3 SNEs. So just want to make sure that you are giving quality reviews and posting quality resources. And I apologize for this. I forgot that this makes me click it one by one. Come on. Okay, oops. And this is just the workflow that we've shown you from the beginning. Just wanted you to see what happens. So once again, SNE reviews it. If it goes to the gatekeeping, which an SNE does, then it goes to 3 SNEs. If they all agree that it should be posted, it gets posted. This just shows the different scenarios, what happens. If there's disagreements, it gets sent to one of us SLTs and we arbitrate it. If none of them think it should be posted or are unsure, it gets returned to the submitter. And this, we won't really talk about this. If you want to download the PowerPoint, you can look at it. But these are just all the different scenarios and combinations that could happen. So you can see, or the decisions on the left side, and then the second, third, fourth columns are just what SNE 1, 2, 3, what they think about the resource, and then the last column just says whether it gets posted or not, or if it goes to an SLT, or if it just happens in the software. And this is the calendar we've been looking at. So our next date is May 19th. And on that day, you are to have 1 resource posted, and then you're supposed to review 3 more resources. So it's the exact same as the last assignment. And hopefully, I know a lot of you have had resources that you've submitted and you haven't heard anything, or it still says being reviewed. all over or in every Smarter Balance state right now, the main concern is reviewing resources. So the reviewing should be going a lot faster, and Amplify is making some changes to the digital library that'll make it go a lot faster as well, we think. So yes, so just make sure, keep May 19th in your head for the next deadline. Okay, and some recent updates. This is from February, and most of these are just improving the cover profile guide. But now you are able to link materials from Mars. Mars is a website with all math material, and there is while you're filling this out or on the cover profile, there is a worksheet that you just have to fill out for Mars. It's an agreement, so you can use any material from Mars. You just have to fill out this one worksheet that goes with it. And Joan or Mike, if you do have anything to add, just feel free. Sometimes I don't explain things the best. And yeah, so cover profile is more intuitive, new. Yeah, I guess you can kind of read those. Those are the main new release features. Oh, and this is a new one as well. You can now sort resources, and I sent an email about this as well, but you can sort resources from oldest to newest. So you can look at the oldest on top. And we just ask that when you're reviewing, you always review the oldest first, just because that's more fair. And if you've had one in there forever that's waiting to be reviewed, you'd want yours to get reviewed before someone who just put something in there. So just make sure that when you review, you're reviewing the oldest. And this just talks about the enhanced resource cover profile. What's nice about it, you don't have to click to view the cover profile anymore. It's just all on one page. You can just scroll. And we also had users that were having issues. The digital library would log out while they were submitting a resource or while they were reviewing a resource. So now the program waits 24 hours before automatically logging you out. So hopefully that doesn't happen anymore. All right, and then another new feature is enhanced browsing to help educators find posted resources. So you can sort them by newest, you can sort by most viewed, you can sort by highest rated. So yes, you can actually rate resources now too. And you can still filter resources by the Common Core standard. And then also enhanced resource profile. So this just allows you to share resources with other educators once the digital library goes live and all South Dakota or all Smarter Balance states have access to it. Right now you're the only ones that have access to the digital library. And then you can also view related resources, and then you can flag resources. So if you find a resource that has typos or you don't think it should be out there, there's something that alarms you, you can flag the resource so Amplify can take a look at it. And the last thing you can do, you can now favorite your resources. So if you find one that you really like, you can favorite that resource. All right, and then new features that are coming on April 14th. So first off, your ability to retrieve and edit a submitted resource before gatekeeping begins. What was happening is an SNE would submit a resource, and then they realized that they made errors to it, and they wanted to go in, edit it before it actually got reviewed, and they were not able to do this. They would just have to submit it again. So what this allows is that SNEs can now grab their resource, edit it, and put it back out there before it ever gets reviewed. But once it enters into gatekeeping, you can't review or you can't edit it anymore until it gets sent back to you. And then streamline resubmission process. So resubmitted resources will be sent to the prior SNE reviewers. And all this means is if your resource gets sent back to you, once you make revisions and you submit it again, it'll get sent to the exact same SNEs. And I think it's like after a week, if one of those SNEs doesn't review it, then it goes back out there for all SNEs to be able to grab. So that's just nice that it goes back to the same SNE, so then they can check to make sure that you as the submitter made the changes that they asked for or that they thought was needed. And then expanded collaboration functionality. This just makes it so you can create and moderate forums, search and join forums, or post discussion topics and replies. And now SLTs will have access to SNE members' resources. So if there's something that you want SLTs to check for you, SLTs now have access to that. And there is a special storage space for copyright clearance forms that is not visible to digital library users. So if you have a resource that required a copyright clearance form, once it gets posted, users will not see that form. It'll be hidden from them. All right, so any questions about the new updates? All right, if not, we'll just keep chugging along. So now review updated guides. So we put this in the wiki too. Sorry, was there a question?
Yeah, Matt, this is Marilyn. I was just slow on the draw there. So I have a question about the reviewed lesson going back to the SNE reviewer. But that's just starting now, right? The ones that we reviewed before are not going to come back to us. That's a change. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's supposed to happen on April 14th. That's what they say, so hopefully that's still the date. I haven't heard anything different, so, but yeah, right now it's not like that.
Okay, thanks. I must have missed that April 14th. Okay, thank you. I'll go back to mute.
And do we know if, I don't think we know if for sure if the ones that you've already reviewed, if that, when it goes into effect, if you've reviewed it before then. So we're not positive if it's retroactive or starting with reviews on the 14th.
And I totally forgot to add this. After April 14th, the submitter can view feedback at any time for a resource if it gets returned. Right now, you can only view it while it's in draft mode. Once you click to start editing it, all the feedback disappears. But now you'll be able to review feedback at any time. And also, revised resources do not go through gatekeeping again. So if you resubmit a resource, it does not go back through gatekeeping. It goes directly to those 3 reviewers. And then the last thing, SNEs can see the progress on their resources once submitted, so they can see where it is in the process. So for instance, you can see how many SNEs have reviewed your resource, get a better picture of where it's at in the whole process. It doesn't just say being reviewed.
And by the way, there will be something in the notification, so if you've done some reviews and that resource has gone back, please make sure you're logging on at least a couple of times a week to see if some notification is there that one that you had reviewed needs to be reviewed by you again. And I believe, again, as Matt said, I believe it's a week, and then it goes back out into the general SNE for review. But obviously it would go a lot better if the same people can review it. So try it at least a couple of times a week. Just check those notifications.
Okay, so going to the, I don't know what just happened, sorry. Oh, okay. So going back to this, the updated guides, these are on the wiki, and part of your assignment was to just review these updated guides. We just want to talk about a couple changes really quick. The first one on the cover profile guide, you can find these all on the wiki, like I said. Just want to talk about on page 5, that just talks about the files and embedded materials sites that you don't need copyright permission, exceptions for YouTube, and you can check with Joan if you do have questions about this. Joan, did you want to talk about this at all, or?
Yeah, just to remind everyone that all of these guides are on the wiki, like Matt said, but they're also within the digital library. So when you're working within the digital library, you could check. But the thing to remember is that not only do we have a new process for the Mars materials that the teaching channel has also been added. And what you do is within the actual digital library, you look for a new form called the external material form, and then you're able to use material from those two sites, Mars and teaching channel.
Yes, and it explains that in the cover profile guide on page 7, so if you want a quick reference to that. And then YouTube, we do have that permission to use YouTube videos, but the only thing is if the user has their own copyright, you do have to follow that. Is that correct, Joan?
Yes, there's such a thing as called the standard YouTube license that the submitter to YouTube can attach other licensing to their work. So just double check, or if you're in doubt, contact me.
Thanks, Joan. Okay, and then with the gatekeeping guide, we were looking at the data with gatekeeping, and we noticed that some SNEs marked no for all 7 of the criteria. And if you do get all 7 no's, perhaps contact the help desk, since it may be your computer as to why you can't view the resource in its entirety, or contact your SLT, just because some of the questions are, can you view the resource? Is it showing up correctly? And if it's not, you might want to just skip this resource, just save time, don't just mark them as no, it might be your computer. Or you can troubleshoot by contacting your SLT or the help desk.
So if you want to skip it, all you have to do is just not go back into it, except after 72 hours after you've opened it. Remember, it does go away and gets opened up for other reviewers. So all you have to do is just, let that time expire, move on, and try and review a different resource.
And with the quality criteria guide, the only thing we wanted to remind you is just make sure to read the tips and make sure feedback gives rationale for rating, even for 4s and 5s in case it goes into arbitration. So if you're marking something as a 5, explain why it's a 5, why it's meeting it perfectly. If it's a 4, say why it's good and say what could be done to make it a 5, and so on. So any questions about the updated guides? All right, so going on to the resource review. Just to let you know, in the wiki on the Training 3 page, we included this too. We wanted you to review that feedback worksheet. It just told what feedback, it explains how feedback should be specific, clear and concise, actionable, non-judgment, positive tone, and it should support your rating. If you're unclear at what any of these mean, it's right in that worksheet. It's 2 pages, and then the bottom of it actually gives examples of effective and non-effective feedback. So if you're wondering what good feedback looks like, you can go to that worksheet. And I was going to pull up the worksheet on the screen, but it's just 2 pages, and you can look at it just by going to the wiki. So if you want, we can just move on from here. Or if anyone doesn't want to look at the worksheet, you can just write something in the Q&A box. Okay, so from looking at this, so this is the list. What we're going to do now is we have a few examples of feedback. So what we're going to ask is that we're going to give you just about a minute or so just to read the feedback, and then we want you to decide whether it's effective or non-effective and explain why it's either effective or non-effective if it's good feedback. So first example is here. I'll give you a second to read this. And if you can just write in the Q&A box either effective or non-effective, just to let us know that you're done reading it. And for those that are just on the phone, we'll discuss it too. All right, you can unmute your phones. I think you can just push #6. What do you all think?
Well, it gives some suggestion about how to make it better, so I think it's pretty good feedback.
I would concur.
Yeah, because it does say what's good about it and what could be added, so that's good.
Is there anybody who doesn't think it's effective? One aspect of this is that we don't have the actual resource in front of us to directly be able to compare. It does give some suggestions of needing additional explanation and probably materials to fully address. And depending on what all is exactly there, that may or may not be enough, but it's certainly hitting a lot of the points.
Yeah, and like Mike said, we can't see what the resource looks like, so maybe if we knew what the resource looks like, the additional materials and explanation, that might make a little bit more sense. All right, next one. What about this?
There's no actionable feedback.
No actionable feedback. Very good.
Yeah, you could probably say no to everything. It's not specific. It's not clear. It's not actionable.
It's concise, though.
It's
True.
concise.
This is Marilyn. I was going to say too. It doesn't come right out and say put more evidence, but I guess we don't know what the evidence. If it's evidence for claims, we don't even know what kind of a resource this is. So, I guess.
By the way, something that says this is a great resource is about as useful as this is.
Yeah.
True.
It would work just the other way. Whether it's positive or giving suggestions for improvement, you need more than just a brief little sentence.
All right, here's the next one.
The resourcer had a lot of good ideas. I don't know if just wanting a formative assessment for exit is enough to have need revisions, or if it should just be recommended.
Oh.
So what do you all think?
I'm wondering if it didn't have formative assessment involved in it, that's probably one of the main things that is required on a resource is that it includes formative assessment. So it probably, didn't really meet what's required, so I think that it does need some type of, I think the recommendation was good.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I agree. That's what I've been looking for mostly too, is the formative assessment. The rest seems to be, in the resources I've reviewed, the rest seems to be overall pretty good. But the formative assessment is always a struggle.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, because it's definitely positive too, and it's hard too because, like you said, you can't see this resource, so you don't know what kind of formative assessment it includes. So, yeah. Yeah, just skim through this one really quick, and then we just have one more after this.
I think it's a summary of the resource as much as feedback.
Okay.
Yeah, quite wordy. Really not sure what to look for there.
It doesn't really give anything that needs to be revised, I don't think.
Maybe it's the perfect resource.
There you go.
Well, or it could, I mean, it could be one that they're recommending with distinction or something like that, and just pointing out some of the specific things that the author does say it hits.
Oh.
The first three that we looked at, by the way, those were actual feedback comments. As Matt said, we had those. Those to be able to go through and look at. We couldn't compare them with the resources themselves, but we were able to look at those comments. Those comments were not from anybody in South Dakota. I went through and picked those, and I didn't want to use anybody from South Dakota's actual comments. So those were from some other smarter balanced states. Those were actual SNE comments. This one is from a different source.
The feedback worksheet, I think. All right, last one.
To improve the material.
Right. There's not really anything actionable here, is there?
Very vague. It just says it's not appropriate. Design additional materials. So yes, this one probably will not be the most effective.
But what if you do if it's really not appropriate? Like I did a resource that was just a link, and in my feedback I stated that I didn't think links were acceptable formats for the digital library, that it was supposed to be something that was downloadable and you couldn't use links. So what kind of feedback would you give in that situation?
Right, I'd like to find out about that as well. I reviewed one like that.
We do have some now exceptions for links, such as the Mars. There's those very limited exceptions. Mars, YouTube, Joan, what else?
Just for the links, it's just Mars and Teaching Channel, and they have to use that form that goes along with them. I think what you just explained about the link was exactly what I would write. A link, you know, this may be, you could say this may be a link to a great site, but this is not acceptable according to the digital library guidelines.
Right.
And you can also explain how, like, it needs, because it could be just a link, like if it had great explanation in the cover profile, then maybe like if you're using Mars or Teacher Channel, and then it explained like how it could be used, how it incorporates formative assessment, how it includes a Common Core standard and all that, then it would be beneficial. So you could, I guess, write that too.
Yeah, I don't know one was, because this was a gentleman, I think, in Texas who designed a geometry website, and once you got there, you had to purchase the worksheets, et cetera, et cetera. So I really felt like it just wasn't appropriate to begin with.
Oh, not at all. Not at all.
So it sounds like you did that good.
Yeah.
I have another example. Like, I reviewed a resource that just had, it was like a PowerPoint with 43 different formative assessments, but they weren't really aligned to any Common Core standards, and there wasn't anything to do with those formative assessments. I did notice that it was posted, and it did get posted, so I was kind of confused.
And you know what?
I reviewed that one too, and I thought I sent it back, but I'm not sure what happened then.
Well, then I noticed that it was.
They do have a feature in that. So if you see that, if you wanted to, you can go in and flag that. Flagging is for various reasons, but you could flag and add some comments. One thing to flag about, and I think Joan's going to talk about this more later, is copyright issues. Because as a reviewer, either doing gatekeeping or quality criteria, you are not responsible for checking up on copyright. But if you happen to notice something like that later, you could flag it if it actually got posted.
Huh.
But if you have concerns about it, you could flag it, they would review it, and, somebody else would make a decision. That's one of the things about this is there's no one set of absolutes on things like that. So obviously some reviewers thought that it did, and some didn't. And that's, why we have the review process of multiple viewpoints. So it is going to come down to at some point some sort of majority at least thinking it should go through.
And we're hoping that we don't run into this quite as much just because the main focus right now is reviewing and they want quality reviews. So that's why they created that tips for effective feedback worksheet that I was talking about. As you see right now, I'm at the at the wiki page. I'm just in the training 3 part for those that can't see my screen. But I'm going way down to the bottom. So again, here's the PowerPoint that we're using today. But below that, we have training 3 extra resources. So these are great. The first one's one that Connecticut created. It's a resource decision-making flowchart. So it just has questions that you can ask yourself while you're reviewing it, or while you're creating a resource too, I guess. But and if it doesn't meet each part, it says stop. It's just a great flowchart. You can check it out. And then the second one is one I can't remember what state created. I think it might be Missouri, but it's reviewing a resource checklist. So it's just a checklist you can run through every time you're reviewing a resource. And this got sent to every single state that's a Smarter Balance state. So hopefully resources will start getting more quality too. So 2 resources that you can use.
And remember, this is a very new thing that they're doing. And when you're building something from the ground up, it's going to take a while to get that sort of consistency in how people are looking at what goes into the digital library. And that's why, the reviews that you do and the feedback that you give now is going to help develop that. And that's why it's so important to have that at this stage.
All right, so does anyone have any questions while reviewing resources, or any specific specific questions, specific examples, or anything about reviewing?
I did have a question. Is it appropriate to, if you tried the resource in your classroom with children or students, is it appropriate to say, I tried it and I think it, I just would have changed and I don't know that it was necessary, but I would have changed they were simply stating to the student that both sides of the equal sign needed to be equal, instead of, I would have wanted to know if my students could really see the equality. And so I just said that in my review that I would leave that part off. Is that appropriate to do, or?
I think so, because you're giving them some actionable feedback because you actually used it.
Yeah. Okay. I just wondered. I just thought, well, I thought it would be a little bit better of a resource if they left that part out, actually telling the students. So I just said I would take that part off their question or whatever.
Yeah,
it makes it a little more higher level.
Okay. I was going to say, you're the best judge about it too. If you think it's a reason for it not to be posted, then put information in there. Even if it is posted, I guess you could still write that in there. But and each teacher that uses a resource, that's the intent, is that they modify it to meet their classroom or what they think is best. So if you ever use the resource, you could make sure to leave that part out.
Right, and I still recommended it. It was a good resource. I just put in the comments or whatever that it might be something that teachers would want to do is leave that part out.
And comments like that, even if you're recommending it to go on, remember, others may not, so it may be that when that comes to an SLT for an arbitration, that's something that would help other reviewers at a later stage revise.
Okay.
And if it does ever get sent back to them, they'll still get that feedback. So, yes, that's great.
Okay. Thanks.
I have a question. On the quality criteria review, one of the things that we mark and write comments for is integrates media and technology effectively. If no technology is used, what do you check there and what do you write there?
You can check one, but that's not a deal breaker. Remember, it's whether or not it's a good resource. Just because it's not using calculators or a website or something like that, that doesn't mean it's not a perfectly acceptable resource for the digital library. It just doesn't have that specific component. And I think that's probably the most prominent one in terms of your rating on that is not going to have a lot of impact on whether or not you think it's going to go forward. Things, like does it have, the steps for formative assessment is, something that is going to certainly impact.
I agree. But it was a good resource actually, and I didn't know, if I was going to really hurt it if I marked a 1, or if I should, since it was a good resource but just didn't use technology, do I still mark a 3 or a 4 or, No.
If it's not using it, you go ahead and mark a 1 because it doesn't really, apply. But that's not something, that the way I look at it is that's not one that's going to be one that's going to stop it from being a good resource.
Okay.
And we did talk about this.
I'm sorry, your comment could include that this resource is excellent without the technology, or you might suggest, a tool or two that could be added to it. But some don't need those tech tools added to them to be good, nor is it necessary.
With something like that, I think a more effective in terms of it being something that you would consider is if it is something that does use a lot of technology, but when you go up and look at the resource as a whole, it's not being used effectively or well. So even though it's present, it's not being used in a beneficial way. And so, that's where you'd really want to look at how much that's going to impact what you recommend for the resource.
And we did have a discussion about this at our SLT training, and people were arguing, why do we even have this question if it's not a deal breaker, if it doesn't matter? And Smarter Balance just said that they had it just because they thought it would be good if resources had technology, but if they didn't, that is totally fine too. So they left it on there, but it's not a big deal if it's just a 1.
It's an encouragement because that is more and more prominent in today's classrooms as well. Any other questions before we move on to Joan talking about the copyright? Joan, you want to take it away?
I'm ready, thanks. I think the number one thing to remember about copyright is that you as a submitter of the resource and everyone else is expected to do your due diligence, that you examine it, get the correct permissions. But also that fair use does not apply in this case because we're very used to using fair use in our classroom in our schools, but within the digital library, it will not be an open web resource. It will be part of the Smarter Balance contract that states sign. So although Smarter Balance is nonprofit, the digital library will be part of the contract process. So fair use just never applies. 3 things that Smarter Balance and the Amplified people have found is that overall everyone is struggling with understanding copyright, applying it, and then they're struggling with actually getting permission if the form is needed. So they developed a separate, more detailed webinars that we have recorded, and it's on the wiki, on both the Training 3 page and also on the copyright page. I'm just going to go over a few brief things today, but if you would like some more detailed information, you can take a look at that on your own time. Overall, I can say, though, that as an SLT, when things come to me to arbitrate, the majority of the times that I send it back to the submitter is because they have violated copyright law. But again, your due diligence is when you submit. So a confusion is with Creative Commons. We all kind of just use the term Creative Commons, but it's actually 6 parts. Just because you see Creative Commons does not mean that it's okay to go and use it. Only the first 2 you see here on the chart do not require a copyright form because there are different levels. So whether you see the abbreviation or you see the graphic, look closely so that you know which one of the 6 types of Creative Commons you're looking at. And of course, when in doubt, just ask permission. And we could also say, when in doubt, you can check with me. And I'm certainly not a lawyer or an expert, but I have a librarian colleague who's more of an expert, and we will help you as much as we can. The other guidance, and I think Mike has already said this, is that when you go through the gatekeeping and quality criteria reviews, you really do not have to go through and check that license and make sure that it is done correctly. However, if you do see something that is posted in the library that you think violates the copyright, please flag it. And here's my email if you have copyright questions or any questions right now about anything we've talked about today. Go right ahead and ask.
Joan?
Yes?
This is Al Hoagie. I've been on a couple times, and I've found a couple resources that I thought I'd like to review, but when I click on them, one of them in particular, I remember had 40-some pages to it, and it looked like a textbook. And it was somebody's theory and writing. You know, copyright, how do you know if it's really theirs or if it was just copied and pasted or...
Well, and if you, that is a good question because often somebody may have posted that illegally. So don't trust it just because it's on the open web. I think what you need to do is you look through, and usually at the bottom of the website or bottom of those pages, or if there's an original link to where they got those pages from, you could follow a trail. And if in doubt, send it to me and I will do that investigating for you. Or if you're in a hurry, move on and go to something that you're more sure of.
That's what I did. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, are there any other questions? And I can get the list of everyone that was on the live meeting. If you were on the call too, on the PowerPoint, the last slide is a survey. And just ask that you could take this survey really quick just to give us feedback. It's just questions like, what's your biggest takeaway from today? What do you need additional help with? And what questions do you still have? So it's just good feedback for us. Just let us know what's still not very clear to you and if you do need additional help or anything. So if you could just take the survey, it is pretty short. Yeah. Oh, and Amplify sends me a spreadsheet every Monday now of lingering fruit. And what that is, it's resources that just need one more review or two more reviews in order to get moved on. So in the whole process, if you want to review those, or when you're reviewing resources, you can choose one of those and help somebody out just because those are ones that are almost through or almost to be sent back. So if you have questions about that, you can email me or your SLT, and I'll send those out to you either Monday or Tuesday every week. I'll try keeping you updated with those. And I want to tell you too, we are looking for incentives for those that want to go up and over on their reviews. So with the whole assignment, or with all these different assignments, I think you're supposed to review about 12 resources. If you go up above that, so if you, let's say you did like 15, we're looking into offering you CEUs, continuing education hours, if you review more than that. So if you, every 3 that you review more than that, you can get a CEU. So so if you did 15, you could get 1 CEU. If you did 18, you get 2, and so on. And Smarter Balance, I know they're looking into incentives too for those that go or that review more than they're supposed to. So I'm not sure what their incentives are yet. So, and nothing's for sure, so I don't want to say anything. But they're thinking about having additional incentives, though.
Matt, with that, what are the increments? Like, will there be specific due dates that will come out with that as well?
That I'm not sure, so just stay tuned. I can ask about it as well, see if they made any decisions or if they're leaning towards anything.
I guess I was just baffled. I didn't know we were supposed to be doing even more and more. I didn't know.
Well, we just kind of found out about that. Like at the training is when they said, or is when our team came up with the idea of offering CEUs, just because we didn't know about the huge bottleneck. Or we had ideas about it, but we didn't realize it was as big of a bottleneck as it is.
As a Type A personality, I would have been gunning, you know, for that top spot.
Oh, shoot.
I didn't know we were supposed to review that many.
Well, that's indicated. It's just something that is, we're moving on to Plan B, because I think Smarter Balance was a little surprised that they had 1,500 waiting in line to be reviewed, too.
Yeah. Yeah, that is
a little. Yeah.
And things like this happen when we're on the airplane that's being built at the same time. Like this, you're working on this while it's being built, so they're running into things that they never knew would happen. Oh, I was going to tell you though, I think the last due date is, or the last assignment deadline is something like October or something. I should just check, but this lasts throughout the summer. I know it's not fun to do anything during the summer, but at least, I guess I was going to say things slow down, but that's not always true, so never mind. I don't know if that helps or not that you get the summer.
Yeah, after May, there's a deadline in July, and then the last one is October, Matt.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Joan.
But just review as much as you have time for.
Yeah.
So we just have to do one more resource posted by May 19th.
Yep, and then review 3 more.
Already done our 2. We need to do a 3rd one by May 19th.
Resources reviewed by May 19th.
Right.
At least
unless we hear different. Yeah.
Posted.
Yeah, unless we hear different. That's a good point.
Because they haven't been able to stick to schedule with posting one when they have such a backlog of resources waiting to be reviewed, because it's really out of your control whether you get posted or not if you haven't been reviewed.
Right.
Yeah, so if there's another bottleneck, that they might do something like they did for this last one where you didn't need to have one posted. So we'll just have to wait on that.
One last thing from Carla here. I was unable to be on the live computer feed because I'm in a different room. So I just have to take that survey, and that'll count for me for being in tonight?
Yep, that's it.
I get an email that says I'm not doing my job.
It's at the end of the PowerPoint,
Yep.
that's on the wiki page, so.
Yep.
And we'll post it on the wiki as well, and I'll send out I'll send out another email to everybody, just reminding them, just in case people couldn't get on the call or they haven't listened to the webinar yet. But yes, that's all we have, but we'll stay on the line in case there's more questions. But have a great day, enjoy the warm weather, and let us know if you do have questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you.